This happened a few months ago. I'm a 35-year-old delivery driver. I often take late-night routes to make a living. I was tired, but I had to keep going for my family. It felt normal that night, just me and the road, headlights cutting through the dark. I haven't stopped thinking about it. I pulled into a diner. The sign flickered like it was trying to warn me. I ordered a coffee to wake up. That's when I noticed a trucker in the corner. He looked rough, with a beard that had seen better days. He nodded at me. I thought he wanted to chat, but then he started talking about a hitchhiker who vanished. I figured he was trying to scare me, but his eyes told me otherwise. It sent a chill down my spine. I shrugged it off when I got back into my truck. Just another story, right? The night went on, and I drove along that lonely stretch of highway. Shadows danced around my truck. I told myself it was just trees. The radio crackled with static. A cold feeling crept into my chest. Someone was watching me. I kept driving, trying to shake it off. At my next stop, the diner was just as empty. The truckers at the counter acted off. One had a story about strange lights on the road and people disappearing. The unease returned, but I thought it was just more trucker tales. I finished my coffee and left quickly, a knot in my stomach. By the time I got to the third diner, I felt a sense of dread. A trucker told me he saw a ghost on the road. Why were they telling me this? My heart began to race. I glanced outside. It felt like dark shapes were closing in on me. I shouldn't have ignored that gut feeling when I left. As I neared my final stop, everything felt heavier. The road twisted ahead. I wasn't sure if the shadows were real or just my tired mind. But then I saw someone standing by the road. I slowed down, my heart pounding. I leaned forward, peering out the window. Then they vanished. I shook my head. Just my imagination, I thought. I wish I was sure. Then it happened. I heard a voice on the radio, soft but clear. Elliot. My breath caught. I couldn't see anyone, but that was the worst part. I felt completely frozen. The fear crept in like a thick fog. What if those stories were true? What if I disappeared next? I gripped the wheel tighter, trying to stay calm. At that moment, I just wanted to be anywhere but on that road. The darkness felt alive. I knew I didn't want to get involved in whatever was happening out here. I pressed down on the gas, hoping to outrun whatever was following me. My eyes stayed glued to the road, praying I would make it to my stop without another encounter. But as I drove into the unknown, a shiver ran through me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being chased. I pressed on, the engine rumbling beneath me. My mind raced with the truckers, their haunted faces and wild stories. I forced myself to focus on the road. The headlights sliced through the darkness, but the shadows seemed to cling to the edges. Each flicker played tricks on my eyes. I caught glimpses of movement, but every time I looked closer, it was just my mind playing games. Then it happened. A sign for a rest area appeared just up ahead. I pulled off the highway, hoping the brake would help clear my head. As I parked, I noticed an older man sitting at a picnic table, staring into the trees. He wore a faded cap and was clutching a coffee cup like it was his life's anchor. I considered asking him about the stories, but the way he was so still felt unnerving. I got out of the truck and walked toward him. "Hey there, mind if I sit?" I asked, trying to sound friendly. He didn't respond. I hesitated, but took a seat across from him anyway. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the distant sound of crickets. "Seen any ghosts tonight?" I tried to joke, but my voice sounded hollow. He slowly turned to me, his eyes clouded, as if he was peering through layers of memory. "Not ghosts," he replied softly, "but there are things out on these roads, things that take." My stomach twisted. He was serious. "What do you mean?" I urged. He leaned in closer. "People go missing, you know. Not just hitchhikers, sometimes drivers like you. His words hung in the air like a dark cloud. You need to be careful. They work in numbers. I felt a cold flash wash over me. What do you mean, they? He shook his head as if trying to shake off a thought. Just keep your eyes on the road and don't look back. A chill ran through me. I wasn't just hearing stories anymore. This felt real. Look, thanks for the warning, but I really need to get back on the road. I jumped up, startled by the urgency in my voice. As I walked away, I could feel his gaze boring into my back. I hurried to the truck, barely registering the sound of my pounding heart. The radio crackled to life again. Elliot. My breath caught once more. There it was, that voice. I was certain it was the same. I turned to the man, hoping he could provide answers. But he had vanished, just like the figure I saw earlier. My skin crawled as realization hit me. I was all alone in the dark once again. I jumped into the truck, locked the doors, and took a deep breath. Sweat trickled down my back as I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, but I hesitated. Would I take another route? Escape these haunted highways? No, I had a job to do. Just as I pulled back onto the road, my headlights caught something in the distance. A shape. No, more than one. It was hard to make out, but the figures on the roadside seemed to flicker in and out of the darkness. I gripped the wheel, heart racing. As I got closer, the shapes became clear. They were silhouettes, standing perfectly still, watching me drive by. That's when I felt it, a pulse of dread shooting through me, a warning that I was about to find out what had really been lurking on these highways. The road ahead felt different, as if the darkness itself was alive.
I tried to shake off the unease, but it clung to me like a second skin. As I drove, my thoughts flickered back to the old man at the rest area. I couldn't shake the warning he had given me. It echoed in my mind like a siren call. Don't look back. I turned up the volume on the radio, desperate for any distraction. Static crackled, filled with whispers that I couldn't quite understand. Then, there it was again. Elliot. I could barely breathe. Something in my gut told me to turn it off, yet I left it on, hoping it would drown out the chaos in my head. Hours seemed to stretch as I drove through the night. The highway felt endless, like a snake curling through the inky blackness. Suddenly, I saw headlights approaching from behind. Relief washed over me. At least I wasn't alone anymore. As the vehicle drew closer, I could see it was another truck, a big rig. I waved, hoping to connect for a brief moment in the isolation. To my surprise, the driver didn't wave back. Instead, he slowed down, keeping pace with me. I glanced over, and my breath caught. The driver's face was eerily expressionless, his eyes hidden behind the darkened glass. "Join the club, buddy," I muttered under my breath, a weak attempt at humor. I pressed the gas, wanting to put some distance between us. But he matched my speed, never breaking his gaze. That's when the radio blared to life again, louder than before. "Elliot, do you see them?" It was a voice I didn't recognize, raspy and urgent. I felt the hair on my arms stand up. My hands tightened on the wheel as the rig loomed closer, its weight practically commanding the road. I let a glance drift toward the rearview mirror. The shapes I'd seen earlier were back. They flickered, shadows reaching out, as if trying to touch me. Panic gripped me. I tore my eyes away and focused on the road. My heart thundered in my chest, drowning out the voice that warned me I was running out of time. Suddenly, the truck driver swerved into my lane, still moving alongside me. I slammed on my brakes, losing control for a split second. The truck veered back, leaving me shaken. I realized I wasn't just dealing with a trucker. I was dealing with something else entirely. My instincts screamed at me to get away, to break free of this encounter. As I accelerated, my headlights illuminated something on the side of the road, an old rusted sign, barely visible through the brush. The words were worn and faded, but I could make out parts. Beware the darkness. The chill from the old man's warning returned, creeping up my spine. Suddenly, the truck beside me began to lift off the ground, as if an unseen force was trying to pull it away. I could hear the wheels screeching against the pavement. I glanced over, but the driver had vanished, his truck now just an empty shell careening toward the ditch. I swerved hard to avoid it, and that's when everything went dark. The lights of my truck flickered and died. Panic erupted in my chest.
I was trapped, surrounded by shadows and silence. In the pitch black, I heard a voice whispering, softly at first, then louder, echoing all around me. "Elliot, they're coming for you." And just like that, a new reality set in. I needed to escape whatever was trying to take me. My hands fumbled for the ignition, desperate to restart the engine before the darkness closed in completely. I struggled with the ignition, my fingers trembling as I turned the key again and again. Nothing. The engine remained silent. I felt the cold wrap around me, smothering any sense of safety. The whispers grew louder, swirling like an unseen storm, urging me to look outside. Panic surged. I had to do something. I needed to get out of this. I grabbed my phone, praying for a signal. The screen flickered to life, but there was no service. The darkness outside felt suffocating, an entity pressing against the glass. I hesitated, half convinced that moving would only draw whatever it was closer. Then, a soft thud against my door jolted me from my thoughts. I froze, heart racing. I turned my head slowly, peering out the driver's side window. The darkness seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I couldn't see anything, just blackness swallowing the world whole. Another thud, louder this time. I jerked back. Who was out there? I had to know. Slowly, I reached for the door handle, my pulse quickening with each breath. I opened the door just a crack and peered out. All around me was silence, but I could feel eyes watching. That's when I caught movement. A pair of legs stood just beyond my headlights. They shifted awkwardly, as if whoever it was caught between two worlds. I squinted, trying to make it out, and then I saw it. Another figure beside the first, their faces shrouded in shadow. "Help!" The word slipped from my lips before I had a chance to stop it. But all I received in return was an eerie silence. They shifted closer, revealing pale, drawn faces. Their eyes stood out stark against the black, glinting in the faint light. "You shouldn't have looked back," one of them spoke. The voice was raspy, haunting, instantly sending chills down my spine. It was the same voice from the radio. My heart dropped. I slammed the door shut, locking it. I couldn't breathe. The air felt heavy, suffocating. My thoughts raced, desperation clawing at my mind. I had to start the engine. I had to find a way out. Frantic, I returned to the ignition, praying it would come back to life. I turned the key once more. The engine sputtered, hesitated, then roared to life with an unholy growl. Relief flooded through me, overshadowed swiftly by horror as the figures near my truck began to move. They lunged forward, shadows reaching out as if to claim me. I shifted into gear, my foot hit the gas, and the tires screeched against the asphalt as I tore away from them. But as I sped into the night, the whispers followed, chant-like and relentless. "Elliot, they're coming for you." It didn't make sense.
Who were they? What did they want? I needed answers and fast. That's when I saw it, a flicker of light up ahead. A roadside diner, glowing faintly in the darkness. Hope surged through me, but doubt seeped in like poison. What awaited me there? More questions? More whispers? Did anyone inside even know what I was running from? I hesitated, foot hovering over the brake. Ahead was safety, or maybe something worse. The faint light pulsed, drawing me in, as if it were my only escape. With a deep breath, I closed my eyes for a brief moment, then drove towards it, praying for some glimmer of hope. As I pulled into the diner's lot, my heart raced. The flickering neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a ghostly glow over the cracked pavement. I parked my truck and sat for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. The whispers faded slightly, but still lingered, their haunting tones echoing in my mind. I finally stepped out, feeling the cold air bite against my skin. The diner looked abandoned at first, but then I saw movement inside. A figure shuffled behind the counter, their shadow looming large. Against my better judgment, I pushed the door open. The bell above tinkled, sounding almost cheerful in this grim situation. Inside, the diner was dim. A few lonely booths lined the walls, and the faded checkered tiles seemed frozen in time. The figure at the counter straightened as I approached, a man with a scruffy beard and weary eyes. He wore a faded flannel shirt, the kind that blended into the surroundings. "Evenin'," he said, his voice gravelly but surprisingly warm. "What brings you out here at this hour?" I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. Did I really want to tell him about the figures, the whispers? Instead, I cleared my throat. "Just passing through. My truck. There was something out there." He nodded, a knowing look passing over his face. "Things can get rough at night. Lots of stories about this stretch of highway." I took a seat at the counter, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. Like what? Like strange folks lurking around, trying to hitch a ride. Or tales of trucks breaking down, and folks never coming back. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced around, half expecting to see shadowy figures hovering outside the diner windows. "I just saw some people," I managed, my voice trembling. "They looked wrong. They said I shouldn't have looked back." The man raised an eyebrow. "You did look back." "Yeah, I know I shouldn't have." He leaned closer, his voice low. "There are things in the dark not meant to be seen. What you look at may just decide you're worth following." I felt a pit in my stomach. What do I do? "Stay here. Keep your head down. Don't invite anything in." But just as I was about to respond, the diner door swung open with a bang, and two figures stumbled in. They looked disheveled, their clothes tattered and soaked, as if they'd just emerged from the rain. One of them was a woman with wild hair, eyes wide with panic. "Please, we need help," she screamed, darting her gaze around as if expecting something to pounce. My heart sank. Something deep within told me these weren't just ordinary travelers. I shot a look at the man behind the counter, but his expression remained unreadable. "Get out of here!" he barked, voice harsh. The woman backed away, terror etched across her face. "Don't bring it in!" The second figure, a gaunt man, turned to me, pleading. "You don't understand. They're coming for us. You have to help." Before I could respond, the diner lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for a split second. The whispers jumped back into my thoughts, louder and more insistent. I was trapped, forced to decide who to trust, or if I should trust anyone at all. As I processed the chaos, I realized something was wrong. Something was indeed coming for us. I grabbed my coffee and nearly spilled it with shaking hands, a new dread settling in my chest. That's when I noticed a figure outside the diner's window, standing just beyond the reach of the light, a shadow among shadows, and it was staring right at me. The figure outside took a step closer, my breath caught in my throat. I couldn't make out any details, just a silhouette against the bright neon. The diner felt smaller, the walls almost closing in around me. "Did you see that?" I whispered, glancing at the man behind the counter. His eyes were fixed on the stranger outside, and I could see the tension in his jaw. "It's watching," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Get down." The two newcomers were still in disarray, the woman gripping the edge of the counter. She was shaking, her body taut with fear. The gaunt man turned to the door, ready to confront whatever lurked outside, but the diner owner raised a hand to stop him. "Don't," he snapped. "You're inviting it in. You have no idea what you're dealing with." My mind raced. I felt like I was stuck in a nightmare. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice faltering. He didn't respond, his gaze still locked on the window. And then it happened. The silhouette began to morph, twisting into something more defined. Long limbs grew, and the features became inhuman. Something that looked like a face, but was all wrong. My stomach churned as it tilted its head, as if it sensed my terror. "Hide!" the diner owner growled, ducking low behind the counter. The woman clutched my arm, her grip tight. "They follow the ones who look," she said, panic driving her voice. "You have to help us. If we can get out of here." I yanked my arm back. "No, you both brought them here." "Please," the gaunt man yelled. "You don't understand what's coming. You didn't see it on the road. You look back, and they come for you." A low growl echoed from outside, and I could see more shadows gathering around the edges of the diner, like ink spilling across paper. My heart raced.
The diner owner slid open a drawer behind the counter and pulled out a baseball bat. Unexpected, but fitting. "Stay put, or we're all done for." The lights flickered again, and the shadows outside pressed against the glass. I couldn't take it anymore. "What are they?" I cried out, desperation spilling over. "Things that feed on fear," the man replied. "Once they know you see them, they'll follow. You can never look back without consequences." Then everything snapped into place. I was being hunted, along with these strangers. But why? A loud thud hit the diner door. Everyone froze. The wood shuddered, and the bell jingled as the wind howled outside. That was it. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my pulse quickening. "What do you want from us?" The woman lowered her voice, looking terrified. "You have to let us explain. It's not just the shadows. It's the road." Before she could finish, the door rattled again, this time more violently. I was convinced we wouldn't have long to find out what it all meant. The shadows were coming for us, and I had to make a choice fast. Just then, a sharp cry shattered the air. I turned toward the window, and that's when I saw it. A group of them, a twisted mass of shadows shaped like people, eyes glowing with an unholy light, advancing toward the diner. I was about to scream, but all I could do was stare. They were closing in, and we had to act before it was too late. The door rattled again, more forceful this time. I could almost feel the collective breath of the diner residents hitching in fear as the shadows pressed closer, eager to invade our last sanctuary. "What do we do?" I whispered, my heart racing like a trapped animal. The diner owner leaned over the counter, his knuckles white around the bat. "If they get in, it's over," he muttered. He looked back at the gaunt man and the woman, panic flickering in his eyes. "You brought this upon us. You're the reason they're here." "No," the woman gasped, backing away into the wall, her eyes wild. "We were just trying to escape. They don't just come for anyone. They track those who are marked. Marked? I repeated, trying to grasp the implication. My mind was spinning with confusion and fear. The gaunt man took a step forward, desperation written on his face. Listen, you must understand. There's a connection between us, and if we can explain. The clang of metal hitting metal echoed outside, followed by another violent thud against the door. I flinched, the sound reverberating right through me. Shut up, I snapped, cutting him off. You think I'm interested in your excuses? This is not happening because of me. Yet, in my gut, I felt a sliver of doubt. What had I seen on that highway? The flash of something dark in my rearview mirror? I shook my head, pushing the thought away. Now wasn't the time. The shadows outside surged, and the glass window rattled dangerously.
I could just make out the shape of a twisted hand pressing against the pane, as if trying to get a better look inside. A chill ran through me. "Keep quiet," the diner owner hissed. "We can't let them know we're here." I crouched behind the counter next to him, trying to stifle my breathing. The others were still against the wall, hearts racing like the pounding outside, hands trembling as they tried to grasp what was happening. Then the window shattered. Glass sprayed into the diner like confetti, and I ducked instinctively. The billowing shadows slithered in, the faces shifting and contorting in a way that should have been impossible. "Get back!" the diner owner shouted as he swung the bat, but the shadows were not deterred. They surrounded him, a mass of darkness and dread, hungry for fear. The woman screamed as the shadows began to seep into her, not just around her, but through her. She collapsed onto the floor, eyes wide open, mouth moving silently. "Help her!" I shouted, but all I could do was watch as her body twisted painfully. She was trapped, and I felt an icy grip around my heart. "What have they done?" I gasped, realizing these were not mere shadows. They were something more sinister, something that could claim the souls of the living. The gaunt man rushed to her side, but they were already closing in on him too. "Run! Get out now!" he yelled, waving at me frantically. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled to my feet. I didn't want to be consumed, not like the others. But the door was blocked, the jagged remnants of glass and darkness merging in a too real horror. Then I saw the rear exit. The diner owner had left it ajar in our rush to hide. Without hesitating, I bolted toward it, feeling the shadows reach out, their cold breath nipping at my heels. I stole one last glance back. The diner was engulfed now, consumed by the tide of shadows. Everything felt like a terrible dream. I burst through the door and ran into the night, but as I fled, I couldn't shake the weight of dread from my mind. What road would I choose now, and how long would they follow me? I sprinted across the gravel lot, my heart pounding wildly against my ribs. The cool night air hit my face, but it did little to calm my racing thoughts. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave. I didn't know where I was going. I just had to get away. The diner was a tangled memory behind me, shadows devouring the lives of those I barely knew. They were trapped in that dark nightmare, lost to me, while I tore into the night with no safety in sight. I wiped my eyes, trying to shake the horrific images. I could still hear the woman's scream echoing in my mind, see the gaunt man's frantic gestures, begging me to escape. I had to put distance between me and them. But as I fled, a growing unease settled within. What if they followed? My sneakers crunched against the dirt of the road leading away from the diner. Shadows clung to the edges of my vision, lurking just outside the light cast by the distant street lamp. I knew better than to look back. Each step took me farther from danger, or so I hoped. Suddenly, I saw headlights piercing the darkness ahead. A truck rumbled toward me, its beams illuminating the isolated stretch of highway. Instinctively, I raised my arm, waving frantically as I caught the driver's attention. The truck slowed, and the driver's silhouette loomed large in the cab. I rushed toward the door as the truck came to a stop.
My heart wrestled with desperation and hope. The driver rolled down the window, revealing a scruffy man with a tired face. "What's wrong, kid? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need a ride," I panted. "Please, there are things back there, shadows." His brow furrowed, and although I saw skepticism, something in his eyes softened. "Get in," he said, and I didn't hesitate. I jumped into the passenger seat, slamming the door shut, as if sealing away that nightmarish reality. The truck roared back to life, and I took a deep breath, bracing for the comforting hum of the engine. As we sped away, I glanced back. The diner was now just a faint glow against the darkness. But that relief was short-lived. The driver didn't seem to be in a hurry to talk, and my mind raced with questions. What would I say? Would he even believe me? I turned to him, but he was focused on the road. "You won't believe what I just escaped," I blurted. "There were these shadows. They were alive." "Shadows, huh?" he replied, his tone casual, almost dismissive. "You sure you're not just spooked? Out here we see all sorts of things. Could have been a trick of the light." "No, you don't understand. They were—" Before I could finish, the truck jolted. A shadow flickered across the road, an unsettling presence. The driver cursed under his breath, steering the truck to avoid the phantom. I felt my stomach twist. "Did you see that?" I gasped, gripping the seat. "Yeah, I saw something," he said. "But don't worry, it's probably just a deer or something." Just a deer! I wanted to scream. Nothing felt normal anymore. The undeniable tension grew, filling the cab with a discernible weight. That's when I saw it. A figure standing at the side of the road, cloaked in darkness, watching us. I froze, eyes locked on its form. "Did you see it?" I shouted. "There's someone there." He glanced quickly, confusion on his face. But when he looked back, the figure was gone. Just like that, it seemed to vanish into thin air. The driver shook his head, still skeptical. "You need to relax, kid. It's probably just your imagination." But I wasn't convinced. As the night continued to unroll before us, I felt the chill creeping back in. Silence stretched out, taut and heavy. I had escaped one nightmare, but what if another was waiting just around the bend? The road ahead seemed endless, stretching into an abyss of darkness. The faint glow of the dashboard lights barely pierced the suffocating blackness outside. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. My eyes darted around, seeking movement, any sign that might explain the dread tightening in my chest. "Hey," I said, breaking the silence, "do you often drive this stretch at night?" "Not really," he replied, still keeping his eyes ahead. "Just picking up some late loads. You're not the first hitcher I've had, though. Most just want to ride to the next town." "Yeah, but I really need to get away from back there." I could feel the weight of my own words. I didn't want to think about what had happened or what I had seen. Then a thought crept in. What if those things followed me? What if they knew where I was? "Look, shadows don't follow people, kid," he said, his voice steady and calm. "You're spooked after what happened. Just breathe, breathe." It was hard to focus. I kept thinking of that woman's scream. I couldn't go back, but I also couldn't ignore the fear that sent icy fingers down my spine. Then came a sudden shift in the air. The truck's headlights flickered. "Did you see that?" I gasped. "Just the headlights. You're on edge, that's all," he chuckled. But it didn't bring me any comfort. I knew I wasn't imagining it. But moments later, the lights on the dashboard dimmed. A complete blackout swallowed us. My heart raced as if the world around us had vanished. I could feel my breath short and erratic. "What the hell?" the driver exclaimed, slamming his hand on the dashboard. "Stupid thing, come on!" Then, just as quickly, the lights flashed back on. Everything appeared normal, but shadows danced in my peripheral vision. I caught a glimpse. Two shapes darting across the road behind us, quick as a thought. "Did you see that?" I shouted again. "There's something back there!"
"Just stay calm," he replied tersely. "It's getting late. Your mind's playing tricks." Tricks? I was done with that. Just as I was about to protest again, a loud bang echoed through the cab. The truck lurched violently, and I gripped my seat with white knuckles. What was that? "Probably a flat tire," he said, his tone suddenly serious. "Just hold on." He turned off to the side of the road, and I stared out into the inky blackness. Trees loomed like giant sentinels, their branches twisting like fingers. My heart hammered against my chest, and I could feel the cold sweat on my brow. "Stay in here," he ordered, stepping out. I stared after him, feeling utterly alone. The silence was thick, and in that stillness, I heard something. A whisper? No, there was nothing there. I fumbled for my phone, but there was no reception. That was when I saw it again. A figure, shrouded, lurking among the trees, staring our way. My breath hitched in my throat, and I pressed my face against the glass, desperate to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. Then I heard a scream, an echo of the woman's cry from before. It reverberated in the stillness. I felt a dread rising within me, dark and real. The driver jumped back into the cab, panting. "We gotta go, now!" "Did you see it?" I stammered, fear creeping into my voice. "There's no time, just trust me." As the engine roared back to life, my hands trembled in my lap. But as we pulled away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, following us. I turned back, and for a split second, I could swear I saw those eyes in the darkness, hungry and alive. And that was just the beginning. I thought we might escape as the truck barreled down the highway, lights cutting through the black like a lifeline. But the reassurance of motion eroded quickly. Anxiety settled in my chest, heavy and suffocating. "Why did you pull over?" I hissed at the driver, trying to ignore the shadows creeping along the roadside. "Didn't you hear that scream?" He kept his eyes fixed on the road, each line of tension deepening around his brow. "I didn't want to risk a blowout. Would you rather be stranded? We should have just kept going at that diner." A knot tightened in my stomach. He had a point. I'd been so convinced something terrible was chasing me. But what if I had lured it to us? What if it already knew where to find me? As if summoned by my thoughts, the radio crackled again. "Elliot," it whispered, chilling my skin. I swung my head toward the driver. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" he replied, irritation creeping into his voice. But before I could explain, the headlights flushed over something, no, someone, standing in the road. The driver jerked the wheel. "Watch out!" The truck swerved, tires screeching. I barely had time to process what I saw. A figure, pale and gaunt, eyes wide with terror. I turned back to see it vanish in a blink. Just an illusion, I told myself. "Damn it!" the driver yelled, slamming on the brake. "I'm not stopping again, you got that?" I nodded, unease curling in my stomach. "I don't want to stop, just keep driving." But as we surged forward, the shadows outside seemed to stretch, twisting at the edges of the road. I could sense them, almost tangible in their hunger. "What if they're trying to find me?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. "Kid, you can't start believing that. You're safe in here," he replied coolly, yet there was a tremor in his voice. The shadows thickened around the truck, pressing in close, as if testing the illusion of safety offered by the metal frame. Suddenly, another thud against the side of the truck shattered the momentary silence. The driver glanced nervously into the rearview mirror as the truck jolted slightly. "What was that?" He put on speed. "I don't know," I responded. "We shouldn't look back." But glancing backward felt unavoidable now. I caught a brief glimpse, a silhouette darting from the trees, a glimmer of glowing eyes reflecting the headlights. "They're coming!" I shrieked, dread spilling unbidden from my lips. But with that cry, the atmosphere shifted. The driver's demeanor became serious, struggling against the growing chaos. He gripped the wheel tighter. "Stay calm, we can outrun them." But as we reached for the next rise, the radio screeched to life again, the voice low and ominous. "Elliot, let us in." A wave of panic surged through me. The closet feeling to dread dawned upon me. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to hear that voice, to see the hands groping for me in the dark. I turned to the driver, pleading, panic tightening my voice. "Just go faster!" He pressed down, the truck racing into a blur of darkness and white lines. But the road ahead dissolved into a mist, shadows pooling at our feet. "What is happening?" I yelled, as the shadows began gathering in earnest, moving with an unnatural speed. The truck shook under the weight of the unseen. "Hold tight," he shouted back, eyes wide with fear. The world outside transformed, becoming spirals of inky black, the landscape shifting in ways that made no sense. My heart pounded in my chest, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. I could feel it, a force yearning to lurch us back down the road from which we escaped. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for the mist to dissipate. "No!" I shouted, voice breaking. "We have to keep moving!" And then the truck hit something, a hard bump that sent our bodies lurching forward. I braced myself against the dashboard, my pulse racing. The driver gripped the wheel, teeth clenched. "We hit something!" A side glance, and I saw a dark shape rolling off the hood, disappearing into the ghostly mist behind us. My breath caught in my throat. What was it? "No idea. Just keep your eyes forward." But before I could answer, the shadows rushed toward us, rising like a tide. I screamed, heart hammering in my chest. The radio burst again, shrill and chaotic. "Elliot, you can't escape. Let us in." The weight of dread pressed down harder than before, wrapping around my throat, squeezing. I turned to the driver. "What do we do?" Desperation surged in his eyes as they darted to the rearview mirror. "Hang on!" He shifted the truck to another gear, engines roaring as the shadows whispered promises of unseen terror. "Drive!" I shouted, and he complied. The road ahead brightened suddenly, the mist beginning to lift. But even as we pushed forward, I sensed it. The shadows were upon us. They surged, dark tendrils wrapping around the truck, grabbing at the edges as they clawed desperately for entrance into our sanctuary. I could see darkened figures darting in anticipation, and goosebumps prickled my skin. "That sign!" I pointed to the glow of a silhouette further down the road. But was that a sign of salvation or our doom? He slammed down on the gas, the truck racing again toward the flickering light. As we barreled forward, the figures twisted and writhed around us, the whispering voices becoming a cacophony of pounding dread. "Let me in!" They called, tempting me with promises I couldn't quite decipher. The air felt charged. I could sense the shadows desperate to take their claim on me. But there was a chance, just a chance, to escape. "What's at that sign?" I yelled. My heart raced with the uncertainty that lingered. "Arrest stop! We can find help!" But just as we charged toward it, the shadows surged up, creeping into the truck bed. Their cold touched from the surface, seeking flesh. It felt impossible to breathe. As we reached the end of the road, ripping past the flickering light, a sudden gust of wind wrestled with my body. It felt like I was teetering on the edge, enveloped in chaos. The dim glow of the diner illuminated our path, shining like a beacon amid the night's horrors. But it didn't fight them off. The voices became monstrous, wrapping around me. My heart thundered against my ribs as I faced the inevitable. They'd follow. I had escaped for now, but the ghosts of the highway would never truly let go. The questions began to spiral in my mind as we thundered past, guilt gnawing at my heart.
Were the whispers real? Were those who vanished still out there, or had they become a part of the shadows? I thought about the diner's inhabitants, consumed by darkness just moments before. It surged forward, undeniable, relentless, a dark presence chasing me through every curving road. I had survived this time, but as the shadows melded behind me, I understood that the darkest part of the journey was far from over. In the stillness of those winding roads, between shadows and headlights, I knew one thing. The weight of secrets would trail behind me like phantoms through the night. And there were still questions left hidden, swirling with the darkness just beyond reach. I could only hope that one day I might find the answers, or learn to accept the terrifying unknown that lingered, waiting in the silence.